as I get on this podcast and preach to you about living a standard of excellence, it doesn't just stop at the microphone. I live it out every day to the best of my ability. There are moments where we learn on this podcast a lot about ourselves. And one of those moments happened on this particular episode.
I should have said something because it bothered me, but I let it go because on my side of things, I'm thinking, but he's got all these things going on. I'm not going to add to it. It's probably just a bad day because it's not typical for you. So I'm going to let it go.
I actually don't know where it started with me not, because like you say, we've had our check-ins. I'm a man of faith. And so when I start to feel like the load is getting heavy, I've preached this message, I've actively done this, I talk to the Lord and I say, you know what, Lord, you said that your yoke is easy, your burden is light. And so I'm gonna exchange these things that I'm carrying. I'm gonna exchange this burden for you and just hold your burden, which is light. And then apparently I decided to take some of those things back and actively worry or just allow them to wear on me.
He's not engaged with me in the conversation because you're watching the computer as you're talking to me,
and that's never good. That's never a good situation.
Especially for me, because when he travels, that's my only time is the conversation, and that's my quality time. That's my connection time because we don't have the physical.
Well, let me say this. It's not just in particular to you because of what you need. It's just in particular, period. There's a lot of discovery. I'm fumbling over my words because I'm actually learning something about myself in this show in real time.
Process, yeah.
So I'm trying to work through understanding that. And my ego's like, well, why didn't you recognize that sooner? Because I didn't. Today, we're going to talk about overwhelmed, and it's a journey episode. And as we were coming up with this, I want to give the audience things that are very helpful. And so in preparing for the show, we want to talk about me and the telltale signs of when I've had too much and what we decided to do, the value of our check-in and how we kind of caught, I don't know if you call it a failure, but how we caught each other not living up necessarily to the standard that we promised, thinking that we were doing the right thing for each other. And then we're going to give you 2 or 3 keys to help you through this when you see this in your spouse or maybe even in your kids. So, honey, do you want to set the stage just from your perspective? Do you want me to kick it off? What suits you better?
You kind of need to explain what was going on so that they understand the overwhelm.
Yeah. And it's hard for me to admit when I get overwhelmed because it rarely ever happens. But there are times when I put more pressure on myself than I should, and more pressure than is really necessary. And I'm my own worst critic, and I'm my own worst enemy, but I'm also my own, best cheerleader from time to time. But
some of this stuff wasn't your fault, though. Some of this stuff wasn't you pressuring yourself. Some of the stuff was just life coming at all sides.
Yeah, there's a lot. So there's a lot that's going on in the world on a day-to-day basis. But a month ago, Jeanne and I and our youngest daughter went on vacation up to visit our family in Idaho. And, in the current role that I'm in, some of these things that I do, I'm in kind of a sales role. It's high stakes, what I work with. And there are things that operate outside of my control. But as I get on this podcast and preach to you about living a standard of excellence, I don't it doesn't just stop at the microphone. I live it out every day to the best of my ability. And so the day I came back from vacation, I had an extremely difficult situation happen with a customer, and we were working through things, and whatever the services and products that I supply were actually removed. A customer removed them, and it was outside of my control, outside of my company's control, and it was really a challenging circumstance. So that's kind of where I started to take some things personal, I think, as I'm kind of trying to think through what happened. And, there had been hiccup after hiccup, and we had done our best. I had done my best to kind of to walk the customer through it. And look, our customers have customers and they have demands
Yeah.
that they have to meet. And so that's happening. We have Jeannie and I have a business situation that's going on, and things are not going well. It's outside of our control. It's a partnership. I'm not going to share the details, but there are a significant amount of unkept promises. And there's actually some downright deceitful and dirty things that have happened, and it has affected me in such a way. And we also have financial liability to it. And so that affects me in a certain way. And so that is out there looming. Changes within our family, children, moving out for good reason. And then more things to do with my 9 to 5. Autism presents a particular set of challenges. And then, there was an event that happened that really shook the world, at least part of the world. And that was the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that might sound like, oh, he's a celebrity. Why does that matter? There's a lot of reasons that matters. And so, that had happened earlier this year. I lost a dear friend of mine. There's a colleague that I've known for about 3 years, and out of nowhere he passed away. And then I found out, a few days after the Charlie thing, that another one of my colleagues passed away, and things just started to pile on. And family members have things going on. Um, Jeannie's family, my brother's family, and so through the process of all these things happening, I'm a man of faith. And so when I start to feel like the load is getting heavy, I've preached this message, I've actively done this. I talk to the Lord and I say, you know what, Lord, you said that your yoke is easy, your burden is light. And so I'm gonna exchange these things that I'm carrying. I'm gonna exchange this burden for you and just hold your burden, which is light. And then apparently I decided to take some of those things back and actively worry or just allow them to wear on me. Um, and so the result was my attitude. Um, I had gotten sharp. Um, I don't know, grumpy. Jeannie can explain it. I try to mitigate damage. And look, some of this hit me so heavy that a few times, or at least one time in particular, I had to call Jeannie and just talk to her and say, I just needed to hear your voice. I just found this thing out, and I'm traveling. And, there are ways that, intimacy wise, that when very difficult circumstances are going on in life, one of those ways that we work through it is we connect intimately, sexually, and it seems to stabilize the world, or at least our world. And so I'd been traveling and that didn't work out. And so there was a number of factors going on, and I must have found myself in a place of overload. Um, Although I felt like I was just, moving along, and my attitude changed. So, Jeannie, you could talk a little bit about it. If I agree, I agree. If I don't, maybe I'll push back or try to correct the record or just let you have your say of whatever had happened.
Well, I think over the last few weeks with everything that's been going on, we've been having our check-ins. So we've been consistent with telling each other what we're going through, what's happening. So none of this was new. We both we were on the level with, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm feeling, this is where I'm at. We talked through, I mean, hours of the business stuff, the work stuff, the kids moving, sickness in the family, things of that nature, and just our day-to-day stuff. But in the last week, and this was something that I just started thinking about over the last day or 2 that we've been talking, there are some changes coming possibly in our situation where he's gonna be on the road more. And this was the first week in a while that we actually had a full week of you gone. And that always takes a toll because for whatever reason, when you leave, autism decides to tism more than normal.
Mhm.
And it's not Quincy's fault. It's that the house is out of balance, and they know that. They recognize when things are different, and it's not their routine, but it is their stability. So I think that plays a factor. Um, you know, Bubba was getting excited and nervous because baseball's coming, and so he wants to do it, but he doesn't want to do it. So there was a little bit of back and forth with him, and dad wasn't home, so I didn't have the same comfort level where both of us can kind of attack it from both sides. Um, Kirsten has got some things going on with her teeth. Dentistry is not easy when it comes to her. So I was stressed out this week because she's not eating, and yeah, with the medications and stuff she takes, she has to eat in order for it to absorb properly. So I had gone out and we talked about it, and I said, I'm going to go get these things for her, which put us over budget financially with our food budget. And that on top of I wasn't paying attention to the card that I used. It was already at the limit. I pushed it over the limit. I didn't mean to, but it notified Quincy and he's already dealing with these things. So that came up and that kind of frustrated him and he tried to shove it aside, but that's if you listen to the podcast, that's an area that Quincy and I rub each other the wrong way often. And so that's one of those things that I just wasn't staying on top of. I thought I was, but I was in my mind, I was paying attention to the budget, not the card that the budget is on. So that was my fault. But then I just started noticing like at night when he's away and we talk, usually we connect, we have conversation, we talk about the day, we talk about the kids, we talk about how we're feeling. It's a normal like going to bed conversation. And the first night you were on a computer, which you haven't done that in a really long time.
Well, that's not true. I just haven't done it until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, which I have done
No, I
recently.
thought about this the other night. In your travels over the last probably month or 2, when we're talking to say goodnight or we're having our nighttime conversation, it's after the gym, it's after you've done your stuff, your Power 5. There's no computer. We're face to face and there's no distraction. It's just us. I
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah. It's
And
usually between like
yeah,
11:30 and midnight.
yeah, but this time you were working at
Mhm.
12:30 at night. So that was the first thing that kind of caught me off was that's odd for you to be working that late, but something had come up that you had to handle and it was just taking longer than expected. But he was already frustrated. That was what I caught on to was he's not engaged with me in the conversation because you're watching the computer as you're talking to me,
And
which
that's never good. That's never a good
so
situation.
especially for me because when he travels, that's my only time is the conversation and that's my quality time. That's my connection time because we don't have the physical.
Well, let me say this. It's not just in particular to you because of what you need. It's just in particular, period. Because, and I'm just thinking through this out loud, it's whether I'm on the computer or not, whether I'm at home or not, if we're spending time together, everything else needs to be put to
Mhm.
the side. And that's another area or layer of where I allowed some pressure to get to me. And there are layers and layers and layers to this pressure. And I believe I just carried too much of it because I'm used to operating under a significant amount of pressure.
Mhm.
But I just let some of this stuff I actually don't know where it started with me not because like you say, we've had our check-ins.
But if you think back over the check-ins, we missed one and then we made up for it.
Yeah.
And then when we came home, all these things just started happening. And I think even though we were having the check-ins, I think you were trying to sort through some things when we first got home,
Yeah, I
and you were
really was.
trying to make some decisions. And I think that's where it started because you started to make those decisions, and then we got pushback. And then we started to make different decisions, and then we got pushback. And on top of that pushback, you had all these other things that were kind of going on from various places. And we did have good stuff in the middle. It wasn't all bad. But this last week, we had a colleague who passed away. We had the Charlie Kirk situation, which hit you really hard.
Mhm.
Um, that's your own to discuss, however, whenever you want. But that hit you really hard. And then we had, for me, we have a kid on a college campus. So I was a little nervous because I didn't know where this was gonna go.
Yeah, it took place on
And
a college campus, so
and she doesn't know at the time, she didn't know what was going on because she's in her college world doing her thing. She's
mhm.
not paying attention to the outside world. And then on top of that, we had the autism thing going on. And then the first time we had a little hiccup, I took it as he's got a lot on his plate. He's having a bad day. I knew you were having a rough day. I knew that you were already slammed with various things from different directions. So I just let it wash. I shouldn't have. I should have said something because it bothered me, but I let it go because on my side of things, I'm thinking, but he's got all these things going on. I'm not going to add to it. It's probably just a bad day because it's not typical for you. So I'm going to let it go. The second time, because we were talking, um, and I had mentioned we were talking on the phone. I hadn't talked to you all day. That was the first time we had talked. And you're upset because the credit card popped up on your phone and said we went over. And you let me know you paid it off. You were going to let it wash. You weren't upset about it. But it was just the way the conversation happened that it hit me sideways because and and again, we don't think the same about these things. We
Mm-mm.
know this. But in the moment, I'm not thinking about that. I was frustrated because he got upset that I went over the budget and I wasn't trying to go over the budget. I was trying to take care of Kirsten. My primary concern was she's not eating. I don't have things that I can make easy for her to eat. I'm gonna go to the store and I made myself a list and this is what I'm gonna do. But I had to have stuff delivered because I couldn't leave that day, which always costs us more money. Always. But then it was just the way it came out. I took it sideways and was like, ooh, okay. I'm not gonna get mad. I'm not gonna yell. I'm not gonna get frustrated. I'm just gonna let it wash. I'm not gonna say anything. We had already had a hiccup on Monday. It was a small thing, but for whatever reason, it really pissed him off. And then I got frustrated because we were going somewhere, we were late, we were on somebody's spare time, they were taking time out of their day off to do something for our son, and I wanted to stop on the way down. I said, which place do you wanna stop at? Let's go to this one, or we can go to this one. Which way is the map telling you?" Well, by the time we made a decision, we had passed both locations. So we'd already spent time wasted going past the 2 locations. We stopped at a different location to go get something. He thought I wanted something to drink. I actually wanted something to eat. I didn't specify that. So it took a little bit longer for us to get our stuff and leave. So now we're 10 minutes late. For Quincy, that was a frustration. For me, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just thinking about getting me and Hunter something to eat.
It's like a reoccurring theme here.
I don't always I just don't always think about certain things. My
Mhm.
my mind is on 100,000 things at one time and then something will sneak in and it's like, "Oh, damn. Sorry. Wasn't that wasn't where my mind went."
Mhm.
So, anyway, long and short of it, we get into a conversation and Quincy's like, "I wish you would have told me if you would have said you wanted food. I would have known it was gonna take more time. We would have made other arrangements." The whole time he's talking in my head, I'm not arguing with him, but in my head, I'm thinking, well, if we would have stopped at the first place that I said, we wouldn't have been 10 minutes late. But we just kept driving because we were trying to follow the map. And I'm kind of going back and forth in my head. Do I argue about this? Do I not argue about this? Do I let this go? Was this my fault? Was this his fault? And I'm not saying anything, which is pissing Quincy off because I'm not saying anything. And all he's looking for is an acknowledgement and an apology, which eventually happened, but it wasn't what he wanted when he wanted. It was just stupid. It really was. But then we had the death of a colleague, and Quincy called me out of the blue and said, "I just want to hear your voice," which always alerts me quickly, because if you're calling me because you need me and you're not close, that always puts me in okay, where, what capacity am I needed and how soon can I get there? It's just how I'm wired. So we talked for a couple of minutes, and then the next night we talked on the phone, and that's when you were on the computer and you were just not present, which is not normal. So I brushed it off. I didn't say anything, which I should have. We figured that out in the check-in. I should have said something, because that festered for me
Mhm.
the rest of the week, because whenever we called, now when we called and it was Hunter, he talked to Hunter, he was face to face with Hunter. He was still working, but he still kind of Hunter only says like the same thing 50 times, so it's pretty easy to hold conversation with him, but he just wanted his dad. So we have an agreement: when you're on the road, we FaceTime so he can see dad and he can see that dad's working and he's fine. But then when he would talk to me at night, again, he's just not there. The second night, he was tired and he's falling asleep during the conversation. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get off the phone. And then when he got back on the way home, again, we don't think alike. A couple weeks ago, we had a situation with our banking. We couldn't find a check, and we were trying to figure out where the check went in our banking. For whatever reason, we couldn't see the check. We saw the transaction, but we couldn't see the check. So I needed to go into the institution to get a copy of said check. In between there, we also had multiple conversations about the bank changing over their electronic system. I can get into it, Quincy can't. We don't know why. We don't know what happened, but he can't get into it. We talked about it a couple of times, but it was in like these passing conversations. We're doing other things, and it's like, by the way, when you get a chance, can we? So for whatever reason, I didn't hang on to that information. So long story short, he comes home Friday, he calls me, he sends me a text, says, "Hey, while you're out, can you go to the bank? I want to do banking this weekend, or do money this weekend." Okay, cool. My thought, for 2 weeks we've been worried about this check, so I'm going to go to the bank and get the check. I went to the bank, I took an hour, I irritated some people. It became a real hemorrhoid to them for a few minutes, and I finally got my check. Came home, I'm happy, I did what I was supposed to do. Quincy calls me and starts talking and says, "Did you go by the bank?" "Yeah, I got the check, everything's great." He's like, "Did you move money?" "What money?" I didn't know I was supposed to move money. And it frustrated him because he can't do finances without moving money. I know this, but I don't know this because it wasn't communicated. "Hey, I'm going to do finances this week. Can you check the account and move money?" That part of the conversation was missing from the text. And the same week, I'm taking a class for myself, for my business, to help me not be so overwhelmed and
Mhm.
not be so hard on myself, and to help kind of block my time better so that my time management is more efficient and I'm more present in the things that are important. So I was in that mode, not really thinking about these other things. So when we sat down for the check-in, Quincy asked me, "How is Jeannie the wife?" "Actually, I'm irritated." And so I started explaining, which started a warm
Hold on a minute. You didn't start to explain. You said, "I'm irritated." What'd you say? But it's no big deal. I understand. Like, we can kind of move on. And I'm like, we shouldn't
Yeah,
move on. Why don't you elaborate?
yeah, I didn't want to have the conversation because, again, I'm stuck between he's mourning, he's frustrated, he's had a really crappy couple of weeks. This one in particular was just really, really bad. And we haven't seen each other. This is the first night that he's home. So we haven't seen each other. Our normal intimacy is 3 to 4 times a week. And our last intimate moment together was the night before he left, and he's been gone for 4 days, and it's been a really crappy week. So our normal connection and our normal make everything else right was gone. It just wasn't present. And I didn't wanna ruin it because I knew that that night that was happening. And so it was kinda like, I don't wanna ruin that because I know that it's something that we both need, and I don't wanna have an argument and then have that be one of those, "Are we going to or not?" I didn't want that kinda evening. I hadn't seen him all week. And so we finally started talking about it, and I explained to him why I was frustrated, and he was heated because he was frustrated. And again, I missed things in the conversation. He missed things in the conversation over the week, but I told him, "I noticed you started pulling back. You were not talking to me like you normally do. You weren't present. You were kind of there was something in between us, and I didn't know how to approach that because you're already going through so much. If I throw this on top of it, is it gonna make it worse?" And I didn't want to add anything else to the pile. But then we both came to the agreement, but the last time we had this type of situation, we agreed we'll say something. Before it gets to this point, before it becomes a problem, one of us will say something. So it in a way it was a fail, but at the same time it wasn't because we recognized it in the check-in and we agreed to recommit to fixing it. But in the moment of everything that was going on, we knew to do it, but we just didn't do it. And I think that that's
Well, whatever decision you made not to do it, I respect that. You thought I was going through too much. And just listening to you talk through the story, which if you, the listener, if you're sitting there going, why does this matter? There's a few reasons this matters. And I'm
mm,
really going to paint the picture for you here in just a moment. But I can understand your hesitancy as I'm going through these things. And and maybe the misconception that I'm pulling back, I definitely was not pulling back from you. Um,
no, I think you were just pulling back in general.
I was sort of just in the spot of taking a knee,
Yeah.
and I'm realizing it more and more now because I thought to myself, and I'm not trying to be ego driven or anything, but pressure is nothing new. It's not a big deal. I actually enjoy pressure and I thrive in pressure.
Mhm.
If I'm not telling the truth, you can
No, you're telling the truth. You work better when you're challenged.
I I can work either way, but when the pressure's on, I do feel like I can in most cases step up to the pressure
Mhm.
because I like to put myself in uncomfortable positions to grow. This is something different and I'm kind of getting a little bit more understanding about it. Um but to go back to this, I understand you not wanting to say something because you thought it would make it worse.
Mhm.
And the truth is that it wouldn't. And I understand, even your apprehension on Friday night because we had been together on Monday night on or Sunday night on a little getaway on a staycation, and we had had some of our time alone, time in a hotel, time to have sex, which was good, and we were looking forward to Friday because of other reasons. And so I can understand you not wanting to complicate that situation. The truth is, though, in what I believe is if I didn't press you to talk about those things, then we would have just been having sex because those things still would have been on your
Mhm.
mind. It would have been in your heart. And so I encourage you, listener, to honor your promises to your spouse, to yourself, and to your spouse. Now, why does this discussion matter? Number one, because yeah, we have 361 episodes of a podcast, but we still go through basic marriage
Hiccups.
hiccups, conflicts. It's still there.
Yeah.
With the tools that we have, I think we're both much more confident right now that if there is a hiccup or when hiccups come, my confidence is there that it may be a rough, but we're going to resolve it and we'll be better because of it. And so, like I told her in the check-in, which thank God for the check-in, because if you're going to hide in the check-in now the way we do it, you're hiding on purpose.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, that praise be to the Lord. And I'm not saying that jokingly. He wrote that on my heart. I can't even take credit for it. I just brought it out to Jeannie and it's changed our marriage for the better. Um, but I think it's important for us to hold each other accountable lovingly. And things got heated between us, and that's okay because we talked through it. We were able to accept each other's point of view and then come to an agreement. And I was frustrated. You were frustrated, but ultimately, this allowed us to reconcile over the matter, which is the most important part. We didn't even compromise, we reconciled, which is much more powerful. And so I'm asking you, the listener, to pause for a minute and think about some of the challenges that you've been going through with your spouse, and then ask yourself, how could these tools, how could these actions that Jeannie and Quincy are talking about, how could they have allowed my wife and I to reconcile more quickly? How could we use these tools so that once we discuss it, there's no residue of resentment left over? Because that wasn't the only tough conversation that we had. In the beginning, we had other tough pieces
Mhm.
to the conversation. And then we had, additional conversations about other tough things. But when it was said and done, we still came together. We had our sex time together. We were able to connect with each other, and there was no residue
Mm-mm.
of resentment there.
No, and it was connection, it wasn't just, getting it done to get it done.
Yeah, and I can't say that this time last year we would have been able to do that.
Mm-mm. All the time last year yeah, we were going through similar stuff, but, we weren't checking in like we were supposed to. We weren't staying on top of things
No, it
like we
was
were
on
supposed
again.
to.
There was very
Yeah.
inconsistent, but it's understandable why it was inconsistent because it was too generic. What's up, everybody? It's the Q Dog. This is a quick break in the action. I want you to know here in America, it's September at the time of this recording, and September is National Recovery Month. And so we celebrate this month for those who battled addiction, substance abuse, drug abuse. And we want to make you aware. So listen to this quick promo about episode 358 about recovery, and we will be right back.
If you've done it, somebody else has too. You are not alone. Ask for help. Help is available.
I find myself at 38 years old with a problem. And I came to Florence because I wanted it over with. I knew I couldn't live that way anymore. And I just, I'd even done a year in jail, when I got to Florence.
Living with my mom and dad, and I was 33 years old, and I was on a walker, and all of my hair had already fallen out. My kids were watching me kill myself, basically, and so at that point, I got to a place in my life where I knew that I needed some help.
We get married, and I only want to do the recovery thing. I think I can just be a good guy and go to work. I don't want to do the recovery thing 100%. Well, I ended up relapsing a couple of times,
If my parents could have got me sober or my kids could have got me sober, that's exactly what I would have done. But that just didn't work for me. I had to be in a place that I wanted to make some changes in my life. Surrender. I cannot tell somebody how to surrender. We have a saying in recovery, surrender to win, and that's exactly what happened to me.
If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please go to aa.org. That's AA like Alcoholics Anonymous .org.
Welcome back to another episode of Man versus Marriage. It is I, your humble servant, the Q Diggity Dog, in the Moran family studio with my lovely wife, Jeannie Moran, and we are joined so what I have learned after taking a step back from all of this. Number one is the difficulty of the assassination of Charlie Kirk and that where that affected me so deeply. And there are people who land on one of two sides. There's a third side out here which are the people who celebrated, you know, this human being assassinated in front of his family, which to me, my feeling is those people are simply disgusting. You're right to celebrate what you want, but to me, he's a husband, he's a father, um, and you're celebrating the assassination of someone. Anyway, I had conversations on Facebook with friends of mine, even a family member. And the interesting thing is that there are many, like, I didn't agree with Charlie on everything, and I don't know every single thing, every platform that he stood on. I just know out of the many conversations that I listened to him professing his faith in Jesus Christ, um, where he stood for the value of having the free market of ideas and open dialogue and the willingness to allow people a platform to share where they are and have open debate. But it was bigger than even the second part of that, um, which was what he was doing to revive the heart and soul of the American man, and not just men in America, but men around the world, to take pride in your family, to take pride in being a man and being a husband and being a father and leaving a legacy. At the young age of 31, that is what he was impressing upon. Just one of the things he was impressing upon the young people, young men and women in this country, the value of family, the value of marriage, and what that does to build and strengthen society. And so that was one of those things. And now I understand that it deeply hurt my heart, but it affected my soul. And then with the passing of another colleague, that's the factor in this, that in my normal day to day, my heart isn't affected as much by all of these circumstances, because the majority of the circumstances that I'm working through are external. But these situations affected me deeper,
Mm-hmm.
because they affected me in my heart, ultimately in my
They
soul,
resonate with who you are,
with who I
with
am.
what your values are.
And also, just losing a friend, in one of my colleagues, and it was tough. And as a matter of fact, in my travel, I usually don't take a lunch break when I travel, just because I want to get from point A to point B so I can get set up and begin working. And this day, I took a break. Just went in, I got a coffee, I sat at the table and just sat there. I did some checking of my emails because it's hard to do when I'm traveling, but ultimately I sat there and drank a cup of coffee and was slightly numb in a way. And so hearing you say you felt like I was pulling back, you know, it 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 may have seemed like pulling back, but really, like I say earlier, it was taking a knee because my heart was so heavy.
Yeah.
Um,
But again, that was my point, was it's noticeable,
yeah,
because that's not normal Quincy. And I don't mean that you don't have to go through things, but your day to day, that's not normal for you. So for me to feel like there's a disconnect, that's a problem. At least from the perspective of, for me, you weren't present in the moment. You were disconnected from me. And that's a big deal. And knowing we have this 4-day gap where our normal fix all for that gap was not available. And we don't really have a backup plan for that. So that was one of the things that we brought out in the check-in also, was his he's going to be traveling more. There's some changes coming. There's some things that are going to be different.
potentially.
Uh, Irregardless of that, there's going to be more, because the things that you had this year aren't set up for next year.
That's fair.
So I know how that works. We had to go through it in the beginning, but it's It's a reset for us, and it's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it's kind of a flag for us to know we need a backup plan when we have this time between us and we're not going to have that physical connection. What are we going to fill that space with when we need it? When we don't have that physical connection and we're going to have 4 or 5 days apart, if something's going on or something happens or one of us just needs the other one, how do we remedy that? And we didn't really come to a conclusion on that, but it was something that we brought up in the check-in to say, okay, we need to think about this. We need to prepare because we need something in place. If you are traveling more, that takes a toll not just on us, but on the house and on the others here. So we have to figure out, does that mean on the days that you're home, we need to clear the schedule and not have all the extra that we have because we need that family time? We need to just sit and do nothing and hang out and watch movies and just hug on each other and love on each other? I don't know. But it's something that we need to prepare for and make a game plan for, because in the beginning, when we first moved here, that was the hardest part when we first moved here. But I was busy trying to transition kids and shoveling kids everywhere because they didn't drive yet. And you were gone quite a bit because you had to learn all of these new places and new people and reestablish yourself in a new place. And it was difficult in the beginning because we weren't getting that time. And again, we had the business crap that was going on and we didn't know what was going on. We were kind of in the dark and we were being fed the wrong information and we didn't know. At the time, we didn't know. And we had issues in our home
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't know how to navigate because it was new and our kids were older. And, we were coming into that place of parenting adults
Mm-hmm.
and what that meant. But it was the same thing. We got into a rut and we caught it. We go back through the podcast. We talked about we got into a routine. We got stuck in a cycle because we didn't stop to recognize something was missing. What do we do when this happens? How do we bridge this so that it doesn't go from just being an irritation and a rub to something bigger because it stacks?
Well, just looking at it from a high level, from where I'm at, um, I'm not trying to downplay the situation. I think this particular situation was sort of an anomaly. And the reason I say that is because the heart factor that was involved. Um, and so, there is another situation related to the business side, not my 9 to 5, but the business side, that I don't want to say it took a toll on my heart, but it did. And so the big takeaway for me is recognizing when it's not just everyday stress and pressure, it's something when it's something that's more consequential, I need to be able to communicate that.
Yeah.
And I guess the way I communicated it without communicating it was calling and saying, I just need to hear your voice. I don't remember the last time I had to do that, but,
Chris.
so it's been,
Chris is the last time that I remember, like solidly remember you calling me to say, I just wanted to hear your voice because this happened and it hurts.
yeah, well, that's probably been 15, 16
Mhm.
years. And so I think in just my opinion, as I'm kind of assessing it live on the microphone, I didn't take that part into an account. And, going back to 2020, it's been my prayer for going on 5 years, as the Lord was kind of working something in my heart because, in the early parts of 2020 when COVID and all that stuff was going on, there was a lot of chaos, potential chaos, in what we thought that thing might become. And so, I began a prayer in having the Lord teach me, like, where there's chaos, let me usher in peace. Where there's hopelessness, let me usher in hope. And where there's fear, let me usher in faith. And where there's uncertainty, let me usher in certainty. And so those things, I learn because he becomes those things for me.
Mhm.
And then whatever atmosphere I go into, I seek to pour that out on his behalf. Um, and I believe to a large degree, I've been able to walk in that prayer effectively. Not in perfection, of course, but there have been some wild circumstances going on. This one is much different because this one truly affected my heart and ultimately my soul. And so it is a flag for me so that I understand that I need to communicate that more to you. But you also, like we talked about in the check-in,
I need to call you on it.
have that. Well, calling me on it it's like an aggressive thing, which you can call me on it, but I really think it's something that I need you to acknowledge for
Yeah.
me, for something that you see, because I'm just continuing to try to move forward, and I know something's off, and I know that I'm heavy. But like I say, going all the way back to when we first got back from vacation, that's when this situation, the dominoes started to fall. And we were talking about them. And so I was handling them. But like you say, within like a 1 week time span, um, situations happened that affected my heart. And that's something that obviously I wasn't prepared for, or I didn't know how, to identify it.
This is how I knew something was wrong. You had a moment where something good happened to you and you should have celebrated it. You felt great. You were happy about it. You were happy to tell me about it, but you were so heavy because of what had just happened that you didn't even get a moment to say, this is why it felt great. Like you didn't get a moment to really celebrate it. You just told me it went great. It was good. I'm happy with it. It was what I wanted. That was it. But it was a moment and you had two of them back to back that whether or it goes one way or the other, you put yourself out there. You put yourself in a challenging position because it's what you wanted to do and you succeeded at it to a degree to get to the next challenge. And you never took the moment. Normally, you would talk to me about it and be like, yeah, this happened and this happened and this happened. And you would walk me through all the ins and outs. And you gave me like a 5-minute brush over and then went right into everything else that's been going on. That tells me where your heart was because you don't brag much. You don't build yourself up. But when you meet a challenge and it does something for you, it's something that you've really put your heart into. I'm the first person that you come to and go, baby, look, it was this and it was this and it, and then you start kind of just going to the clouds for a minute with it. You didn't even go to the clouds, dude. You stayed firmly grounded the whole time. That's not you. That is not you. And I knew, and I thought about it and I was like, well, there's a lot going on. And I let it go. And then when the second one happened, and the second one was even bigger, and it should have been a moment because I know who you talk to. I know how you and that person click. I know what that conversation does for you when you guys meet on that level. And it just wasn't, you just didn't talk about it. And anytime you talk to that person, you always tell me, God met us in the middle of this conversation, and it was this, and it was this, and it was this. That was not there. That's never not there with that person. And I know it. I've come to know when you mention that person's name, it's like, oh, here we go. Because you guys talk about Mo and you talk about just life. Again, it was a 5-minute brush over. And then it was, well, I've got to get this done because I've got this meeting tomorrow and I need to work on this and I need to work on this. And it was just like, okay, where's the rest of the story?
Yeah, I mean that particular conversation and those moments were the day of.
They were heavy.
The Charlie
They
situation.
were heavy. Yeah.
And it was very difficult, for me to move past that. I can't even tell you that I've totally moved past it now. Um, just with with how horrible the event was. And there's things there that you can't unsee if
Yeah.
you've happened to see them. And so, as much as it's about Charlie and my pain for his family that's no longer, that he's no longer present with in the natural, in the people that were there and his wife and kids, there's a bigger picture to it that gets very concerning. And so that weighed extremely heavily on me. And my heart was already reeling in a sense. And then, losing another colleague and then coming to the realization about a little bit more with this business situation. I think it was just done. I was cooked,
Yeah.
as they say these days. I was cooked. Um, and I didn't realize it until we started talking about it, listening to you talk about it from your perspective. I didn't realize how heavy it was on my heart that and I don't want to say it's like you see people jumping out of a plane and the parachute doesn't open and they're holding on to the parachute for dear life. But I had to take a moment, um, a few moments, because my soul was really heavy.
Yeah.
And then conversations, going on with people that you care about that you might disagree with, which I'm totally good with the people that I disagree with. Um, but one of those in particular was incredibly disappointing. And so, you know, I think there is a mixture of those things. And then, some extenuating circumstances with family members and sickness and surgery and potential
Yeah.
passing on, that my heart just got in a place. And that's why I say typically, you know, I hand those burdens over to the Lord and he helps me carry them. And this time, for whatever reason, I didn't do it effectively, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so, I am human after all. And that's, to be vulnerable, when you don't live up to your standard, um, sometimes you have to face that and you have to learn and you have to grow. And it's imperative that you look at yourself in the mirror and learn the lesson, because this was a big lesson for me.
Yeah.
And then putting in the added piece of acknowledging, hey honey, your attitude's pretty sharp, because I acknowledge that in your life, and it is uncomfortable sometimes knowing what you go through on a day-to-day basis, but it's our commitment to one another. So if you don't do it because it's uncomfortable, then you're not, and I'm not, honoring our commitment to each other and to our relationship.
Well, and it's really hard sometimes when it's like this because you know we try to do things when we're together and things are hard and things are rough and you know we're both going through something. We try to intentionally say, okay, what need can I meet in the place of what we can't do right now? Like with your surgery and not having physical touch, not having, sex, we had to come up with how do we bridge that? What other needs can I meet so that you're still getting something from me that fills your tank? And this time it was, I knew he was stressed. I knew he had stuff going on. So I took the whole week and decided, little by little, I was going to start cleaning some things up because clutter drives him crazy. And the last month since our vacation, it's like our room became a catch-all, and I'm up against a deadline, so I'm not really taking the time to clean stuff as much, and I'm not really trying to organize things because I'm on a deadline, and we've had a couple of weeks of lack of sleep and whatnot with autism, and just it's been really hard. The flip side to that is I wasn't sleeping because the two were not sleeping, and I had a really, really crappy week 2 weeks ago where I wasn't getting maybe 3 hours a night, maybe.
Mhm.
So when Quincy came home, the best way to help me, which and I didn't say anything about it. This is my life. This is what we signed up for. It wasn't in the contract when we signed the paperwork or we didn't see the fine print, but this is what we have. And it's my job. I'm their mom. It's what I do. But when Quincy came home, now mind you, he's been on the road all week. He's tired. He's had his own things. He takes over shift so that I can get a solid night's sleep, or he takes me to a hotel so I can get a solid night's sleep because there's no children there to wake me up. There's no chaos going on to keep me.
As long as there's not like a baseball,
Oh,
you know,
Lord. Or some idiot
tournament in
knocking on
town.
the door at 1 a.m., but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But the point is, we try to do things to fill in for the things that we can't do. And this one was hard. I mean, I did some of the cleaning and stuff. I got some of the clutter out of the way. So at least when you came home, you had a spot to go to where you felt better and you could just relax. But it just felt like it wasn't enough. I don't know what to do in this scenario.
But I truly think that we have uncovered it. I may see it a bit more clearly than you do because I can recognize within myself where I started to struggle.
Mm,
And I didn't acknowledge that part. I tried to, and I may not even be articulating this to the listener well enough, but stress and pressure are stress and pressure. When it hits your heart, it's a different type of pain, pressure, and stress. But I just categorized it as the same thing and kept moving forward. When all these other things don't affect me emotionally, they don't
gotcha.
affect my soul.
Gotcha.
And these things hit me deep in my soul, like painfully. And so I didn't even know I needed to acknowledge that. As goofy or ridiculous as that sounds, I needed to take a step back and be aware of what is this thing going on inside of me.
No, that makes sense to me.
And then even though, because we will have bouts of time when I'm traveling or, we're too exhausted to get our sex in, which has happened plenty of times in our life, whatever the case may be, this is more than a physical moment. This is not something that a physical moment might fix. This is something that I must acknowledge and recognize, and to be able to articulate first to myself to say, whoa, dude, this is different. This is not normal stress and pressure. So you do need to take a knee. And then I need to come to you and say, this is affecting me more deeply. This is affecting my heart as a human being, which sounds weird to say as a guy, but
I don't think so.
it is what it is. And so you may experience that through the loss of a relationship, or you may experience that through the loss of a loved one, or in this case, like I did, the loss of a strong acquaintance that is a colleague. Like, not enough time to spend together to call friends, which you could say we're friend colleagues or whatever. But there was a time next year where we might go to the state where he lives, and I'm like, hey man, we're coming up there. We got to spend some time together. And so we're more frequently talking and discussing business and so on and so forth. And then this comes, like, I didn't know that his situation had come to this, and then it was over.
Well, and that's too close together for you too, because the last one was not very long ago. It's just been a few months.
Yeah. And so
And you just came from that golf tournament too.
that's a good point.
I didn't even think about that until just now. The other colleague that passed away, they used to do a golf tournament together, and the week before, you had just come off of that golf tournament and being around people and
I came back from vacation to that hard situation at work and then into that tournament where he wasn't.
Yep.
And that was very heavy.
And then you just got this one this past week, and then Charlie.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think for you, just looking at it now, and I know this is going longer than we intended, but looking at it now, you didn't have an opportunity to really work through the fires you were putting out. And then you went straight into that tournament. And that tournament, although there was some good things that came out of it, there was also, because I remember you telling me, it was great because there was another person there that you knew he would be happy that they're getting married and they've got these good things going on. And this was something that you had both wanted for this person, for them to find something and to find somebody and to be happy. And I remember you talking about, he would have wanted to celebrate that. And it just felt weird that you couldn't celebrate it with him.
Yeah. And it was his hometown.
And then
where
this one coming right on the back of that, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was just a lot in one short time period. But the things we pulled out of it, so that this makes sense to the listener. The check-in is game changer. The check-in is absolutely 100% been the best thing that we have done. And I don't know how long to help us. It's not just moments like this. It's us talking through life changes. I'm at the beginning of or about to go into however you want to put it, the menopause phase of life. Things are changing, emotions are changing, hormones are changing. But talking through things is a lot easier when you're constantly asking, how are you?
Yeah, I think we'll do another show just on the basis of the check-in, because I want Jeanne to give her testimony from the chiropractor and from other angles of what the check-in has meant to her emotionally. But I will say, yes, number one, as far as the tools that that we're going to give you is the check-in. And the check-in goes like this in very short order. It's how, and we ask each other this question, but how's Jeanne the woman? And I ask, how's your faith? How's your health? How's Jeanne the wife, the mother? How is Jeanne the daughter, the friend, the professional? And then is there anything that's open? And what that does is it really, truly forces us to look inward and not just say, oh, things are good. The answer you get from your teenager. Sometimes you say, how's it going? Oh, it's fine. That's how our check-ins would go. Unless we had something to argue about. And now that is completely different. And we did miss a check-in by a day, but to me, to us, we missed it. Yeah. So we had like 15 or 16 weeks in a row. And then now it's a no compromise. It's a non-negotiable for us. Even though we were a day late, we don't want to miss. And so we're able to get in and discuss those things. And tool number 2 is, please dig deeper in the conversation. When it comes to the check-in, ask questions and then shut up and listen, because your spouse may have something of importance that he or she needs to talk about. And look, there's a lot of discovery. I'm fumbling over my words because I'm actually learning something about myself in the show in real time.
Process, yeah.
So I'm trying to work through understanding that. And my ego's like, well, why didn't you recognize that sooner? Because I didn't. But I am now. And I didn't even think about one of my dearest friends in the world. I didn't think about that first week and how that was the tournament. And at the tournament, that is where the Charlie situation happened. And it was just cascaded from there. And it was all very heavy. And then, the passing of another colleague. And so, there are moments where we learn on this podcast a lot about ourselves. And one of those moments happened on this particular episode. And then number 3 is the double down. And we've never created anything called the double down. It actually doesn't exist. I just want to use that as a phrase to say, when you don't meet the standard that you've promised each other, just double down on it and recommit yourself since you have identified and now you know how I feel about awareness, since we are aware of it, now we're going to double down on it. And in the future, if Jeannie is uncomfortable or if I'm uncomfortable, we can simply say something close to or related to the phrase double down, and then we will know. It's our own little buzzword language that we have multiple words that help us make uncomfortable things more comfortable to approach. And those 3 tools right there, they will be life-changing for you. How do I know? Because they're life-changing for the 2 people on this broadcast. And so that's really all I have for you now. Yeah. That's it. All right. Make sure that if you have anything you want to talk about, I guess if you have any hate mail you want to send me because I was a fan of Charlie Kirk, you know the email, Quincy@MVSMpodcast.com. Maybe you want to share your experience there and how some of these situations has affected you, or maybe you yourself have gone through some very difficult times with the loss of friends, family, loved ones, etc. Please email me, Quincy@MVSMpodcast.com. You want to know more about the check-in? Email me. Whatever Jeannie and I can do to help you. Restrictions apply. But that is all for now, honey. Any final words before we make our way out?
No, baby, we got it.
All right. I love you.
I love it too.
All right. She is Jeannie Moran. I'm Quincy Moran, a.k.a. The Cute Dog. And this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.